This is the Page Publishing Book Club, don't you know? Don't you know, Rob? It's the Page Publishing Book Club. Yes, we are back with another fabulous show. I'm your host, Alice Stockton Rossini. Rob Barrett's my engineer. And you, my faithful listener, you are looking for hope, inspiration, direction, affirmation, a reason, a path, a spark that'll help you get done what you know you want to get done. And that's get your first book published. Am I right? So here we go. You've probably never even heard of a man by the name of Dave Davy, but he left an indelible mark on this country. He overcame illness and a lifetime in a wheelchair to go on to become one of the architects of the Americans with Disabilities Act. This is his story. It was written by his wife, Ann Cummins. It's entitled Beyond Barriers. And Ann, the two of you started this book before Dave died 11 years ago. That had to be so difficult.
It was. It actually was. In fact, he probably wrote about 2,000 pages of things that I could use, but I couldn't. I'd read a few pages, then I'd start crying, and so I thought I would just pick out just a few things out of there that he wrote, and then I would go ahead and finish it myself. So that's what I did. Dave was 12 years old. He was playing football, and the next morning he woke up and fell on his face, and he realized he had polio. And so he was lying in bed in the iron lung for several months, and then when he was getting out of the hospital, they said, don't waste any money on college because he won't live past his middle 20s. And the sad thing was that half of them did die young. What happened was it was going to be a bad winter, so his parents sold everything. They just sold everything and moved down to Florida for a year because the doctor said otherwise he wouldn't make it. Then he went on to college. He went to Wayne State University, and it was really funny because they said, well, you're in a wheelchair, so you're going to want to take accounting. He hated accounting. Finally, I think he said he was a junior, and his prof was smart enough to say to him, you hate this class, don't you? And he said, yeah, I do. And he said, if you promise me that you will go ahead and change to business administration, I will pass you. Otherwise, I'm going to fail you. So that was the agreement, and that's what they did do. And then when he was in college, he met a really close friend of his, Dick. They were roommates. They both had polio. And they started realizing, wait a minute, people have to be able to get out and get a job, or they can't have a normal life. Dick said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to places and companies like GM and have them build cars that a person can get into or that they can drive if they're in a wheelchair or if they can't use their legs or their arms. And Dave said, well, I'm going to develop programs that people can develop their minds and that they can get ready to go to work. So the two of them, when they graduated, both of them went to work for Goodwill Industries in Detroit. And then Dick went on out to California, and Dave was hired, actually, as their sales director, and then he was also in the program for the Goodwill exec training. At the end of the year, he got fired because he didn't do a good job in sales, and Goodwill International sent him on down to Sandusky, Ohio, and he developed a program down there. And then from there on, the book is about how they got the laws changed, how they got people to work together so that they could develop what really needed to be done. And then he started working with Bob Dole on other committees, and that eventually led to the Disabilities Act. And he was the liaison for all the Goodwills and for all the rehab facilities in Michigan to work with Bob Dole on that. So he was on the phone a lot. Sometimes he was in Washington, D.C., sometimes he was in Kansas and other places helping to develop that. Of course, Bob Dole was the real source of that, and thank God that it went through, and now America is America.
Wow, what a great story. I would think there'd be specific places where you could put this book.
Well, that's what why we wanted to write the book, not just to be writing a book, but to be telling people that have a handicap, you aren't your handicap. The handicap is just one of those things that happen to you, like if I stub my toe, I have a sore toe. And it's to say you are the person inside there. Your mind and your heart still belongs to you, And this is a person that we want people to see. If they see somebody in a wheelchair, we don't want them to see the wheelchair. We want them to see the person that's sitting there and smiling and maybe hurting. It's a motivation to live. That's what it's really about, is living. And I know that's one thing that Goodwill has always done, and they've always tried to get people on the job. And that was Dave's thing. Every time he gave speeches, and he gave speeches all the time, and it was like, don't sit there and feel sorry for somebody and feed them for the rest of their life. Help them to get a job and let them feed themselves and let them motivate other people to be the people that they can be, because that's really what's important in life. Feeling an accomplishment, to feel good about yourself, because it's hard to make other people feel good if you don't feel good about yourself.
So true, Ann. So true. Thanks so much. Simone Kleckner is here. It's her second interview. That's right, her second interview here on the Page Publishing Book Club. She also has a story that will motivate and inspire you. An immigrant from a communist country who came to America, worked hard, achieved the American dream, and her book is called The Story of a Life, Liberty Regained, Volume 2. Welcome back, Simone. How did it go?
Well, it went out very well. Volume 1, I gave some speeches, and this year we're going to talk about my second volume, which is in sharp contrast with the first one, because in Volume 1, I had the desire to show my 20 years under an oppressive totalitarian communist regime, during which my life crumbled to a hopeless low level, with 4 members of my family in prison, with all goods nationalized, or receiving my diploma only after 3 years so that I couldn't practice, and being evicted from my own house in 3 hours, not to mention the constant terror and fear to be imprisoned. Now, in my second volume, which I called Liberty Regained, in which I had been honored with a foreword by David Vandenberg, the Honorable American Ambassador to Romania from 81 to 85. In this volume, I showed the blessings that came my way in the United States in April 66, when I arrived here with my husband. Oh my God, what a blessing and what a break that was. And this is when my second volume starts, right at the airport, when my life totally changed. From a newcomer, penniless immigrant, I became a free person. And then I was able to put to good use my formal education, my foreign languages, and my law diploma, which was useless in Romania under communism, but finally it paid off here in the United States. I was able in 1969 to obtain a master's degree from Columbia University, and later in 73 I took a second master's degree from New York University, both allowing me to land prestigious jobs in 3 different environments. At the beginning, an academic one at New York University School of Law Library. Then the next one in an international environment at the United Nations. And finally, a federal one at the U.S. Court of International Trade, which happened to be in New York, and where I stayed another 10 years, and I retired in 1996. And I really hope that my journey that I described in 2 separate volumes, Liberty Lost and Liberty Regained, will present some interest, because I felt it was important to give the contrast of the way I had been treated under Lenin's Marxist communism and how I found my way under American capitalism, where I got close to its democracy, its constitution, its rule of law, and where I witnessed the capitalist prosperity which was brought about in America only in 245 years if you compare it to Europe, where they never reached that level. It is here that, as a free person, at the age of 39, when I arrived in the United States, I was able to start and to shape my life and fulfill the American dream.
Oh, Simone, I love it.
I wanted to close by saying that having now my memoirs in print and on the market, I am at peace that I will not leave this world without having shared my beliefs regarding the impact of two completely different political systems.
Yeah.
That's what I have to say, and this is what they have to read, both books, so that they can make comparison of the big contrast.
All right, I get it. Make a note of that. You got to read both books. That makes sense, and that way you can kind of put it all together. I am looking forward to your next visit on the Page Publishing Book Club, Simone. Thank you so much. Maria Eho, our next author, she's a clinical psychotherapist. So the idea of a medium, a person who uses psychic ability to connect with dead people by tuning into their spirit energy, kind of put her at odds, right, with everything she was taught. Then a good friend died, and she lost faith and wound up getting an invitation to meet with a group of mediums. It changed her life. Her book is entitled There's an Elephant in Your Living Room, The Diary of a Medium. It is her diary of the experiences she had after she became a medium. Maria.
Well, the actual event evolved, little pieces, as my medium skills began to develop. I also began to speak with other individuals there. They had no psychological problems to speak of. They were well-centered, well-mannered, from all walks of life. And these individuals were seeing things that I was sharing, and we were seeing pieces of the same thing. So I began to research these phenomena, and I found myself experiencing not only dead people, because it sounds very off the wall, but actually see entities, their struggles to understand the new environment, how much of their mental capacity is still intact when these entities come in or are brought in, and how it differs from the medium's actual mind.
You're saying that people who are no longer with us, who are deceased, you're talking about their thought processes, you're talking about how much of them you still sense or feel.
Their memories, their thought process, their struggle to understand the environment that they're in, given that they do not have the body structure. They cannot sense physical objects, but yet again, they are there. They exist, they listen, they transmit thoughts. I'll give you an example. We would have to think, and as you notice, I am thinking and I am talking, and between talking and thinking, it takes time to elaborate, to identify what it is that I want to say. These individuals, and at least the spirits that I have identified, they give you everything like in a package. You understand it, you see it, you feel it all at once. The communication is immediate, and the person who receives it understands fully what is going through the mind of this individual. When we say mind, do not tie that necessarily to brain, because a spirit doesn't have a brain, but he does have a mind. I remember when I started college, I had a class in functional neuroanatomy, and I asked the professor, they gave us a brain. You have to dissect them and understand where all the different working parts. I asked him, where is the mind? And he said, okay, when you find it, let me know. And now studies and scientists are telling us that it appears to them that consciousness is outside the brain. And it is. Basically what I want is for people to understand that there is more. There's a continuation of life, and that living matters. What you live, how you live, who you love matters, because that is what you are taking with you. You're taking with you your intentions, your love, your regrets, your happiness. You're taking it with you. And no one that you love is lost to you. No one. I would like for people to understand that, because it brings great solace, and it gives them, I could say, more ability to love, to live, not to fear life, and not to fear death.
I find that very comforting, Maria, and we're going to let you think about that for a minute while we take a very short break. When we come back, another psychotherapist uses his background to make a case for faith, a suspense novel about a couple that gets sucked into a life they never planned for, and some classic short stories. Stay with me. This is the Page Publishing Book Club.
Attention all authors. Page Publishing is looking for authors. Have you written a book and want to get it published? Page Publishing will get your book into bookstores and for sale online at Amazon, Apple iTunes, and other outlets. They handle all aspects of the publishing process for you: printing, cover art, publicity, copyright, and editing. Call 800-204-6099 now for your free author submission kit. That's 800-204-6099 for your free author submission kit.
Hey, we're back on the Page Publishing Book Club. That was very quick. Be Not Afraid to Follow the Footprints from Heaven is the title of our next book, written by John Carpenter, a psychotherapist who used his background and his resources to connect the dots between the Bible and reality.
Be not afraid to follow the footprints from heaven, which basically means don't be afraid to look at some evidence that God might exist. It's not theory. It's not opinion. It's full of evidence backed by scientific research, medical assessments, psychiatry, professional fields who are investigating supernatural events connected with religious appearances and miracles that have occurred since the time of the Bible, all the way up to right here and now in the present.
Give me some examples.
Well, people are familiar with the Shroud of Turin, but they aren't familiar probably with the latest science on it, which literally proves it was the cover for Jesus Christ and also proves that there was a miraculous exit from inside the wrapped shroud, almost like a radioactive burst of energy that left his imprint. And that's a long story, but that's one example. We have communion miracles where the bread and wine actually changed to flesh and blood, which has been proven in independent scientific evaluations that the blood is human blood and that it has human DNA but no genetic profile. Not just one time, but in at least 6 different cases from around the world, they can't find DNA or genetic profile. And that's a very unusual thing that scientists can't explain. You know, DNA always comes from everybody who came before you. But if you're first in line, there wouldn't be any DNA before you. The other thing is the tissue showed that it was cardiac tissue, heart tissue, from a man who had been beaten or abused, that the heart was a living heart, that even though the sample might be 1,200 years old, the blood still is fresh, and it's saying that the blood comes from a living man as if it was taken today. Now, I know I'm giving you a lot of the conclusions without all the details and scientific processes that reach these conclusions, but I'm trying to say that science is actually finding a lot of amazing things, which is validating and improving a lot of the Christian beliefs and practices.
But that's why we have to read your book, right? Because that's what you do for us. You lay it out.
That's what I did.
You lay it out so we can understand it.
And in most cases, it's happened thousands of times, hundreds and thousands of times, all around the world. And to me, that makes it a reality of a higher significance when it happened. It hasn't been a fluke or happened just once, but it's happened numerous times. And so the book is just full of supernatural occurrences, miraculous in nature, which have a lot of science and a lot of backing behind them. I've got 470 pages with 600 references and just hundreds of different examples of things that have been carefully analyzed and looked at, artifacts, images, statues that weep tears, and the tears have been proven to be human tears. bodies that don't decay upon death of saints, and they're still fresh 300 years later. I mean, you can't fake that. How do you keep a body from decaying when it dies?
There's so much here. This is all contained in one book. And
That's right.
Is there another book coming?
Well, I keep collecting and finding things, and so if people like what I've written in the first book and get excited about it like I did, they'll probably be hungry for more, and by that time I'll have more.
All right, John Carpenter, I'll be waiting for that. Iris Reed found herself with some time on her hands, and it was a good thing because she had all of these book ideas and never any time to actually get one published. Well, she's got one published now. It's called Secret Doors, and you say it'll keep us on the edge of our seat, huh, Iris?
It's a love story, and I love love stories. And the dedication that this couple have for each other is kind of like tested through them buying this house. The things that happened to them in this house put their love at a test that they kind of conquered toward the end of it, but it almost kind of tore them apart.
Well, they get involved in the stock market.
Yes, well, the husband is an accountant, and during their time together, they've been married 15 years, he had been buying a lot of different stocks that she didn't even know about. So it got to a point where he achieved the fortune that he was seeking, and it allowed them to retire from their jobs and go out and buy their dream home. But they came across a guy that kind of like tricked them into buying the house because the house was worth way more than they purchased the house for. And they come to find out that there's a lot of things inside the house that was just worth so much money. They didn't understand why this house was sold to them, and they came across a lot of secrets inside the house that kind of scared them. And the couple that they bought the house for was trying to use them as a front for some of the illegal activities that they were doing. You know, not to give away the whole story, but they really didn't want this couple to keep the house. They was using them to be inside the house for them being inside the house too, in secret doors that they didn't know about. So it was like they had it planned for them to live in the house while they were inside the house, so the police didn't think they were in the States. The couple that bought the house felt like everybody was really trying to mess with them. They didn't know who to trust.
What was the catalyst? What was the thing that finally made you get one published?
Well, I was laid off from my job at the post office for a while, and that's when I really started writing this particular book. But after Hurricane Katrina in Texas, I also wrote a couple of books, and I have like a box of stories that I haven't really put through the publishing company. They're just sitting there, and this was one of them I chose to go start on to at least complete, to put it out there first.
Any advice to first-time authors who are sitting there and they can't get moving? Got any advice for them?
If you feel like you want to write a book and you have ideas for it, and you constantly should write every day. Write something down in it to keep it moving every day, like if you're writing in a journal. Make sure that you take a few hours to complete the book so, you could accomplish something that, because it's a great feeling after you accomplish that and your book is published and you see your name, on Amazon. It's just a feeling that you just can't explain.
Everybody says that, Iris. Good for you. Keep writing. Finally, classic short stories by Sir Junior, a.k.a. Johnny Lee. Now, that is some name. What am I supposed to call you?
Sir Junior.
Okay, so Sir Junior is the author of this book.
Yes.
And Johnny Lee is your real name.
No. I'm Sir Junior, also known as Johnny Lee.
That's how the whole thing.
Yes.
So somebody sees you and they go, "Hey, Sir Junior, a.k.a. Johnny Lee." Is that how they refer to you?
No, it depends on who's talking to me.
I'll just call you Sir. How about Sir?
That's the reading way. When I have to write it. That's how I write it.
All righty. Now, what are these short stories about?
There's 8 stories, and no 2 stories are alike. 3 of them has to do with the social events like the LGBT community. So there's a murder mystery. They're all over the map. They're fictional, but what happens is I kind of sprinkle some of my life experiences in there to write the stories.
So you talk about growing up poor, being on welfare, growing up during the 60s. Is that really your life?
It is.
So these stories are kind of based on some of your own personal experience.
Some of them are, as well as current social events. And they're kind of made-up stories as I go along. And I think my book targets a broad demographic, young and old alike. My book is designed for people on the go who don't have time to read a novel but can read a short story over lunch. Also, my book touches upon current social events like what's happening in the LGBT community and the struggles that they go through. So I got time to write now. And I used to tell stories verbally, and people's reaction was like positive. So I thought, well, why not put pen to paper and then see what happens.
Did you find it difficult getting started?
I actually did not. It would flow in the middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning, and it would just flow.
A lot of people say that. It's like once they make the decision, once they commit that they're going to write something, the words just kind of come.
Just submitted my manuscript for my second book last week. I got word yesterday that Page Publishing has accepted the second manuscript for publication.
How's it feel, huh? How's it feel?
Exhilarating, to be honest with you.
What'd you do in real life? Like before you decided to start writing, what'd you do?
Oh, are you kidding? Where do I start? I've done so many things, but the three main jobs, let's see, I drove trucks for UPS for 10 years. I was in law enforcement for 20 years, and I did nursing for 5 years.
Wow. Well, good for you.
Kind of well-rounded there. I did a few other things, but those were the three main occupations.
All right, and now that you're retired, Sir Junior, a.k.a. Johnny Lee, you can say you're an author, am I right? And you, my Page Publishing Book Club fan, can say you're an author too. All you have to do is write the book. That's it. Stick with us. We're going to get you through this. We're going to get through this together. We will have another crop of authors ready to roll for you next week. Same time, same place, 710 WOR. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. This is the Page Publishing Book Club. Thanks so much for tuning in. Have a great weekend.